Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video, we had discussed about Chapter 1 of the Indian Evidence Act of 1872. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the first part of Chapter 2 of the Indian Evidence Act. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand the substance therein. So if you're new here, please like and subscribe to my channel to get the video notifications. So let's get started. So today we are going to discuss chapter 2 that deals with relevancy of facts. So in the previous video we had read chapter 1 and from section 1 to 4. In this chapter we will read from section 5. Now this chapter extends up to section 16. So in this video we will cover section 5 to section 16. Now section 5 says evidence may be given of facts in issue and relevant facts. So this section basically notes down those facts that may be given in evidence in a particular trial. So what kind of evidence can be given in a trial? The evidence that relate to facts in issue and relevant facts. Only those two kinds of evidences can be allowed in a particular trial. It says evidence may be given in any suit of proceedings of the existence of non-existence of every fact in issue and other such facts as are hereinafter declared to be relevant and of no others. So it specifically limits that whenever in a trial a person wants to give evidence, then such evidence must be regarding any fact in issue or any relevant fact and no other. Explanation says that this section shall not enable any person to give evidence of a fact which he is disentitled to prove by any provision of the law for the time being in force relating to civil procedure. So if the civil procedure code has barred such person from giving evidence regarding a particular matter, then that evidence will not be allowed in that particular trial. Now section 6 talks about relevancy of facts forming part of same transaction. So now we are starting to understand what relevancy of facts is. So what kind of facts can be termed as relevant facts? It says relevancy of facts forming part of same transaction. That means facts which though not in issue, that means there are some facts that are not directly in issue but are so connected with a fact in issue as to form part of the same transaction. So it is connected and it is interlinked. So that relevant fact is connected to the fact in issue to such an extent that it forms part of the same transaction and therefore it is relevant. Whether they occurred at the same time and place or at different times and different places, that doesn't matter. If they are so connected that they form part of the same transaction, then that will be regarded as a relevant fact to that fact in issue, to which it is so interlinked. Let's move on to section 7 that talks about facts which are occasion, cause or effect of facts in issue. So whenever there is a fact in issue and any other fact is either the occasion or the cause or the effect of such fact in issue, then that will also be considered as a relevant fact. So it says that facts which are the occasion, cause or effect, immediate or otherwise, of relevant facts or facts in issue. So whether they are immediately or otherwisely related to any relevant fact or fact in issue and they are forming the occasion, cause or effect of such fact in issue or relevant fact, then those facts will also be thought to be relevant facts or which constitute the state of things under which they happened. So whether they set the parameter as to why such fact in issue or relevant fact happened or occurred or which afforded an opportunity for their occurrence or transaction are relevant. So all these kinds of facts that are linked in these ways that are mentioned here in section 7, those acts will be thought to be relevant. Now section 8 talks about motive, preparation and previous or subsequent conduct. So these also form part of relevancy of facts. So it says that any fact is relevant which shows or constitutes a motive or preparation for any fact in issue or relevant fact. So if a fact is creating a motive or preparation for any other fact that is directly in issue or relevant to such fact in issue, then these facts that are creating such motive or preparation will also be thought to be relevant facts. The conduct of any party or of any agent to any party to any suit or proceedings in reference to such suit or proceedings or in reference to any fact in issue therein or relevant thereto, and the conduct of any such person, an offense against whom is the subject of any proceedings, is relevant if such conduct influences or is influenced by any fact in issue or relevant fact, and whether it was previous or subsequent thereto. So the time and occurrence of such fact is not important. It may be previous to it, it may be subsequent to it, that doesn't matter. But what matters is whether such fact is directly influencing any fact in issue or relevant fact, or it is justifying the conduct of any person who is subject to such trial, or any party or any agent to that party, which party forms part of a suit or a proceedings. Now, explanation 1 says the word conduct in this section does not include statements unless those statements accompany and explain acts other than statements. So, a mere statement does not fall within the purview of section 8, but a statement that justifies or explains an act will come under section 8. But this explanation is not to affect the relevancy of statement under any other section of this act. Now, explanation 2 says when the conduct of any person is relevant, any statement made to him or in his presence and hearing which affects such conduct is relevant. So, whether any statement is made to him in his presence and hearing and that affects such conduct of such person, then that statement will be thought to be relevant under section 8. Section 9 talks about facts necessary to explain or introduce relevant facts. So, there are some facts that are necessary to explain, or there are some facts that introduce a fact in issue or relevant facts, or which support or rebut an inference suggested by a fact in issue or relevant fact. So, all those facts that are influencing any fact in issue or relevant fact, like the manner that is mentioned here in section 9, then those facts will also be thought to be relevant, or those facts that establish the identity of any thing or person whose identity is relevant. So, whether such identity is relevant to that case or trial, then the facts that establish such identity of such thing or person will also be considered to be relevant, or fix the time or place at which any fact in issue or relevant fact happened. That fact of such time and place will also be thought to be relevant, or which cause the relation of parties by whom any such fact was transacted are relevant. So all those facts that prove the relation between those parties, they are also relevant so far as they are necessary for that purpose. So if it is necessary for that purpose, it is relevant. That is what section 9 says. Now, section 10 says that things said or done by conspirator in reference to common design. So where there is reasonable ground to believe that two or more persons have conspired together to commit an offense or an actionable wrong, anything said, done or written by any one of such person in reference to their common intention after the time when such intention was first entertained by any one of them. So they had conspired together, they had made a plan, and whether one of them have said, done or written anything that has a direct reference to their common intention, then that will be considered as a relevant fact. Against each of those persons who are believed to be so conspiring. So such thing was said, done or written by maybe one person, and the conspiracy was maybe done by 5 persons or n number of persons. It really doesn't matter. But if one of them says something which is a direct reference to their common intention, then that can be used against all of them, as well for the purpose of proving the existence of the conspiracy, as for the purpose of showing that any such person was a party to. So that particular thing that is said by any one of such conspirator may be used against any of them, against all of them, or for the purpose of proving the existence of such conspiracy, or for the purpose of showing that such person was a party to such conspiracy. Now, section 11 talks about when facts not otherwise relevant becomes relevant. So facts may not be otherwise relevant, but they will become relevant if these two things happen. Firstly, if they are inconsistent with any fact in issue or relevant fact. So if they are inconsistent with the facts in issue and the relevant facts, then it will become relevant. Or if by themselves or in connection with other facts they make the existence or non-existence of any fact in issue or relevant fact highly probable or improbable. So if it is making it highly probable or highly improbable that yes, such fact in issue or such a relevant fact may exist or may not exist, then that fact that is so making it highly probable or improbable, that fact will also become relevant. That is what section 11 says. Now, section 12 says in suits for damages, facts tending to enable court to determine amount are relevant. So, in suits in which damages are claimed, any fact that enables the court to determine the amount of damages that is ought to be awarded will become relevant. Now, section 13 says facts relevant when right or custom is in question. So, where the question is as to the existence of any right or custom, then the following facts will be considered as relevant facts. What are they? Firstly, any transaction by which the right or custom which is in question was created, claimed, modified, recognized, asserted, or denied. So, any such fact that shows the creation, claim, modification, recognition, assertion, or denial of any such particular right or custom that is in question. So, that fact which is proving any such of these will be considered as a relevant fact. Or any particular instances in which the right or custom was claimed, recognized, or exercised, or in which its exercise was disputed, asserted, or departed from. So, any particular instance that will show such kind of things will also be thought to be a relevant fact under section 13. Now, section 14 says facts showing existence of state of mind or of body of bodily feeling. So, facts that show the existence of a state of mind as to such intention, knowledge, good faith, negligence, rashness, ill will, or goodwill, anything that shows the mentality of such person towards any particular person, or showing the existence of any state of body or bodily feeling, these kind of facts are all relevant under section 14 when the existence of such state of mind or body or bodily feeling is in issue or relevant. So, if such state of mind or bodily feeling or such body is a fact in issue or a relevant fact, then all such fact that is showing these things, the intention, knowledge, good faith, negligence, rashness, ill will, or goodwill towards such particular person, or showing the existence of such state of body or bodily feeling or state of mind, those facts will also be considered as relevant facts under section 14. Explanation 1 says a fact relevant as showing the existence of a relevant state of mind must show that the state of mind exists. So that fact must be showing first that such state of mind exists, not generally but in reference to the particular matter in question. So that state of mind must be in reference to the particular matter in question and not in a general sense. So that is what explanation 1 says. Now, explanation 2 says, but where upon the trial of a person accused of an offence, the previous commission by the accused of an offence is relevant within the meaning of this section, the previous conviction of such person shall also be a relevant fact. So whether the previous conduct or commission of such accused of an offence, if it becomes relevant in this trial, then the previous conviction will also become a relevant fact in this trial. Now, section 15 talks about facts bearing on question whether act was accidental or intentional. So, when there is a question whether an act was accidental or intentional or done with a particular knowledge or intention, the fact that such act formed part of a series of similar occurrences in each of which the person doing the act was concerned is relevant. So, if the person was doing similar kind of acts or there was a series of similar occurrences that formed part of such fact in issue or relevant fact, then the fact that will show that yes, there was such kind of series of similar occurrences in each of which such person was doing such act with particular concern, then those facts that will prove such series of similar occurrences will also become relevant under section 15. Section 16 says existence of course of business when relevant. So when there is a question whether a particular act was done or not, the existence of any course of business according to which it naturally would have been done is a relevant fact. So if there was an existence of any course of business that directly proves that yes, such particular act was done because there was such course of business, and such act would not be done if such course of business did not exist, then if the existence of such course of business is proved, then that will become a relevant fact under section 16. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.